or get reach from Johnson & Johnson.
Monday night on Channel 9, a premiere.
We're gonna work for you.
Charles is willing.
We're willing and able.
Abel is angry.
Sanctuary! You can't touch a man in church. I'm claiming sanctuary.
But they're a crazy team.
Abel, those men are bailiffs. They're repossessing the ferry.
Does this mean I can't stay?
And they'll do any dodgy deed just to survive.
Leave it to me.
Grant Dodwell and Shane Withington, Willing and Able, Monday, 7:30 on 9.
Okay, welcome back. There's no question that Sir Joh is the man of the moment in Australia. What's he up to, though? Does he want to be Prime Minister, or does he just want to stir the possum, as they say? I've read all the papers. I've seen Joh interviewed on Willisey and the ABC. I've heard all the radio interviews. And I have to confess I'm even more confused. So we figured that there are only two people who might know what Joh is up to. That's the Queensland Premier himself and the lady who makes his scones when she's not sitting in the Senate. Please welcome Sir Joh and Lady Flo. Welcome.
Thank you, mate.
Now, Flo, a week is an awful long time in politics, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly can be.
Have you kept a handle on this last week? Do you realise it's less than a week since your husband said he was about to light a bushfire?
Yes, and certainly the bushfire has grown, hasn't it, or spread, I should say.
You're an honest woman. Can you clear it up for us? Is Joh does he want to be Prime Minister?
Well, I don't know that you'd say he actually wants to be Prime Minister. I believe that he wants to be sure that Bob Hawke isn't Prime Minister. I think that that's the whole answer, Ray, and he's working very hard to do that. He's got good policies, and I believe they're policies that the ordinary average people will be very happy to have. A policy where it's a 25 cents in the dollar income tax, you know, and to me, if you've got 75 cents in your hand, what are you going to do with it out of every dollar?
You're going to be his campaign manager?
Oh, I suppose I could do a good job, but I'm pretty busy looking after Queensland as one of Queensland's senators, Ray.
You certainly are. Does he have a fire in his belly? I guess that's the question.
Well, I'd say that he has a zeal and a mission. And the mission, I believe, is to get rid of Bob Hawke and to do the best for the family people, for the ordinary people of Australia. That, to me, is what he's all about.
Well, today he's been called a political terrorist, an unguided political missile, more than a troublemaker. Do you think he's more than a troublemaker, more than simply stirring the possum?
No, I told you I think that he's got zeal and a mission, and you work on it, and you keep going. I tell you, the telephone goes in our place at 5:30 in the morning. I don't really like it because I don't like being wakened up quite so early, but it does, and he's always awake and alert and ready to go, and the same, it keeps on going all day, and he's a man with a mission.
All right, well, I mean, you know yourself, I don't mean to be rude, but you know yourself that about 3 months ago with that Queensland campaign, what was being written was that Joh was, no offence, sir, approaching senility, that in fact his hearing had gone, he really couldn't stand the pace. It doesn't look like it this last week.
It certainly does not, and it didn't then either. It was all the media that were wrong. You look at the result. I mean, we got back in our own right. Surprised a lot of people, but it didn't surprise me because I was on the campaign trail and I knew what was happening.
All right, would you be surprised if he was to tell you, I mean, has he told you that he'd like to be Prime Minister? Yes or no?
No, he hasn't said that in as many words. All he said is that he's anxious to get rid of Bob Hawke and make sure that he's not the Prime Minister. And if he puts his policies into place and enough people vote for him, I suppose the answer could be that that might be in the long run. But it's a long way down the track. But I believe that, you know, you're sort of jumping hurdles, to my way of thinking.
But we don't have a long time. I mean, the next election has to be within 1 year. That's not very long.
Oh, well, you just told me that a week was a long time in politics, so therefore a year would be a tremendously long time, wouldn't it?
Joh, in the last week, he has... He's talked about Mr Howard being slaughtered. Let me just get some of these words. It's pretty colourful language around the traps these days. That Mr Howard's being slaughtered, that Mr Sinclair is stupid in some of the things he says, that he's living in dark ages, that they're both losers, that they're horses that he wouldn't back, that he's going to annihilate them, that he's going to do a MacArthur. They're your Canberra mates. You're in the same coalition. What do you think of this?
Well, It is a bit of a tricky thing, isn't it? Because I'm there and I'm part of the team. But first of all, I'm a senator representing Queensland. And I think that's something that we have to remember.
But you're a National Party senator. That's Ian
I
Sinclair's
realise,
party, isn't it?
yes, I realise that too. But then again, you've also got to remember that now and again, you have to be a Queensland senator first, put it like that, and represent the people of Queensland. And the people of Queensland have said so many times that they want Joh, that they like his policies, that they believe that if he says a thing, he'll do it. And that, I think, is something that's very important indeed. And I can remember actually being part of a coalition team when I had to vote against the government down there because they wanted to put tax on essential commodities. And I didn't believe it. And I just about got sent to Coventry down there because I did that.
Are you happy with Ian Sinclair as the leader of your party?
Well, I think that Ian Sinclair has done the best job that he feels that he possibly can do. He works hard, but...
That's not the question, Flo. You know the question. Are you happy with Ian Sinclair as the leader of your party?
Well, I mean, it's not for me to make a judgment as to whether he's good or he isn't good. I think that as I just said to you, he's doing the best job that he can under the circumstances. And he's part of a coalition and they have to work together. And some of the policies, I suppose, that they have, they could actually improve on.
That's not really 1,000% endorsement, is it? It's not really.
Oh, well, that's up to you,
loyal.
and up to the people who believe it. Well, I mean, I'm there and I'm part of the team.
Would you sooner see? I'm sorry. Would you sooner see Joh as the leader of the National Party in Australia?
Well, I believe that he's done a wonderful job in Queensland, and I really believe that he could do a wonderful job for Australia given the opportunity. But that worry, we've got a long way down the track, and I think that those are some of the things that the Australian people will decide. It's not for me to tell you. It's for the people themselves who are going to vote. And I believe that Joh's got good policies and we'll just see what happens in the long run.
Would you be surprised to see Joh as the Prime Minister of Australia?
Well, that'd be the end result, wouldn't it, if they gave him tremendous amount of support, if they accepted the fact that the policies that he's promoting are excellent policies for Australia as a whole. So that could be the end result. But who knows? I mean, I believe that the dear Lord up above plans our lives, and if you work and do the best that you can, and if that's his scheme, well, then that possibly could be the end result. But, I mean, that's not for me to say. As I just said to you before...
You can give him a helping hand, though, can't you?
Yes, the people of Australia can.
All right. I haven't meant to keep you out of this, Sir Joh, but what I'd like to do now, given the target has been, obviously the target is Bob Hawke, as you've said.
Yes.
And your good lady has said.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at what Mr Hawke said to us last year on the program and see what your comment is. Have a look at this.
Look, you know, I'm not, a traditional praying man, but I really have been praying that will happen. I say to Joh, and you can pass this on to him, I would really deeply welcome him in Canberra.
Why is that, Mr Hawke?
But I'd have to say to him, so that the message is complete, as much as I would welcome him, it wouldn't be a trifecta. It wouldn't be a trifecta in which it was Hawke and Howard and Sinclair welcoming him. Johnny and Ian don't want him. I do.
Why do you want him?
Because I think he would add a lovely dimension to the federal parliament. And he would cause the Liberals and the National Party, I was going to swear, a lot of trouble.
What's your quick comment to that, Sir Joh?
Well, he wouldn't be there to welcome me if I came to Canberra. He'd be packing up his luggage, perhaps. That's the only capacity in which he'd be there, because that's the objective that I have, and I guess millions of people in Australia, they don't want him, that's sure. Now, he can pray as much as he likes if he does, which I naturally doubt, having known his background and previous statements. But that, of course, was to be clever or smart or whatever. But my answer to him is the one I gave you. He won't be there, and I'm sure he won't be there.
You mean he won't be there once you get there?
That is true. And secondly, he won't be there under any circumstances, because we've got to make sure, absolutely sure in Australia's interest, that he isn't there. And the people of Australia have got to realise that if they want to get pride back in their country, if they want to get, the things that they're entitled to have, then, of course, they've got to make sure. And together, that's what the end result will be, that he will not be there.
So, Joh, I hate to be confused. As I said, I've read everything the last week and so on. Between you and me, are you going to make a run for Canberra?
Well, I am. I thought you could see that every day.
How about office, though? Are you going to actually say, right, I declare for this Brisbane seat,
Yes.
I declare for this Surfers Paradise seat?
No, they are details that are stated and made known at the right time. You do not make these details
Pretty
known.
important details, aren't they?
Oh, they are. But if you're making a deal with somebody, I bet Alan Bond didn't come around and say, well, I'm going to do this and this before he ever bought the place, and I'll do something else further down the road, and he hadn't even bought it. These are things that come along down the road a little further forward. And but you know where I'm going. Everybody in Australia knows where I'm going. You know why I'm going there, to get rid of Hawke. You can't do part of the job. And we've got to have the policies and the profile.
But what about, there is a meeting going on in Sydney today between your wife's colleagues, Mr Sinclair and Mr Howard, and the shadow front bench, who quite clearly are trying to isolate you, to put a fence around you, to get you out in the cold somewhere. Are you about to give up?
You imagine that? You ever known me to give up? First of all, that is futile, absolutely wrong. They ought to be doing exactly the opposite. They ought to be trying to see how they could harness my efforts and my endeavours.
But you haven't helped them, though, with the sort of language you spoke about before, that calling them losers and living in the dark and so on.
No. Well, the point is, of course, I've said to them that there is no way, and I say it again, repeated, that I will get behind them. They're too heavy to push politically.
You said more than that. You said, in fact, you wouldn't get behind them, you'd get in front of them.
This is correct. I will not be behind them because you can't win with them. They have lost and lost and lost. Their performance is not good. They've been at a level, and I've said this again and again. I've told them. They believe they can, as it were, pick themselves up again. But for too long, they've been like a boxer in a ring who's been knocked down. Every time they try and get up, they're knocked down again, either by their own organisation and people or by the government. And then you say that we've got to back that party or that horse for the next biggest race that this nation has ever seen, with the stakes the highest that we've ever had? No way. We've got to make sure we win that race.
I'm sorry, are you feeling isolated right now, though, given the fact that
not isolated,
Robin Gray has backed away from you, that Ross Edwards in Victoria, the National Party man, has backed away?
They're not backing away. You wait and see. Ray, I'm not isolated. I've got the bulk of the people I know as a politician, as one who's moved around, and one who lives at their level, that I've got the bulk of the people of this nation supporting me. There's no question about that.
I just heard Flo give an exasperated sigh there with these suggestions. Let's take a break. We'll come back and talk with Sir Joh and Lady Flo in just a moment.
When a crime goes unpunished, they